Jack Thompson had always been a man of simple pleasures. Life on his family's ranch had taught him the value of hard work, patience, and quiet moments under the vast, open sky. He woke up each day with the sun, fed the animals, tended to the fields, and returned home with tired hands and a peaceful mind. Yet, despite the satisfaction of his routine, Jack felt a small, lingering emptiness. He wanted a place of his own, somewhere he could escape. A cabin hidden among the trees, where he could breathe freely, think, and enjoy the quiet without the constant responsibilities of the ranch. One chilly autumn morning, Jack sat at his old wooden table with a cup of coffee in his hand, scrolling through real estate listings on his laptop. Most properties were too expensive or too far away. But one listing caught his eye. A small, rustic cabin tucked in the mountains, far from towns or roads, priced surprisingly low for its location. The photos were few, blurry even, but Jack could see the charm. A wooden structure, smoke curling from a stone chimney, a porch overlooking a forested valley. Without overthinking it, Jack felt a spark of excitement. He imagined himself sitting on that porch, watching the sunset, away from the noise of life. There was no time for hesitation. He had always trusted his instincts. Within a few days, after a brief phone call to the agent and signing some papers, the cabin was his. He hadn't seen it in person. He had never stepped foot on the property. It was a leap of faith, a dream purchased sight unseen. But Jack was ready. A week later, he loaded his truck with supplies, tools, and enough food to last a few days, and began the long drive up the mountain roads. The journey was beautiful and lonely at the same time. Tall pines lined the path, their needles brushing against the truck as he drove past. The air smelled of earth and pine sap, a sharp, clean scent that made Jack feel alive. The winding roads were narrow, and at times, he worried about how far he had come. Yet, the thought of finally seeing his cabin kept him going. As he turned the last bend, he saw it. The cabin sat nestled between two hills, surrounded by thick trees that seemed to guard it. Smoke rose lazily from the chimney, just like in the photos, and the sun cast golden light across the wooden walls. Jack's heart raced with anticipation. He parked his truck on the dirt driveway, stepped out, and let the cold air fill his lungs. He was finally here. Jack walked up the small wooden steps to the porch, expecting silence and emptiness. He opened the creaking door and froze. Inside, the cabin was not empty. A young woman stood near the small kitchen area, her hands busy with some dishes. She looked up, startled, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Jack cleared his throat. Hello, he said, unsure of what to say. The woman's eyes widened slightly, then softened. Hi, she replied cautiously. You're the new owner? Jack nodded, still taking in the scene. Yes. I bought the cabin. The woman, whose name was Emily, smiled faintly, a little embarrassed. Oh. I didn't expect anyone to come so soon, she said. I've been living here temporarily. My uncle owned this place, and I was taking care of it after he passed. I didn't know it had sold already. Jack blinked, trying to process the situation. He had expected an empty cabin, maybe some dust and cobwebs. Instead, he found someone living there, making the cabin a home. Yet there was something calm and genuine about her presence, something that made the initial shock fade. I see, Jack said slowly. Well, I guess this is awkward. I didn't expect anyone to be here. Emily nodded, setting down the dish she had been holding. I understand. I can leave if you want. I'll pack up my things and be out in a few hours. Jack shook his head. No. That's not necessary. Look, maybe we can figure something out. I mean, I just got here, and I don't want to cause trouble. Emily studied him for a moment, then nodded. They moved to the small living area. The cabin was cozy, with a stone fireplace, wooden furniture, and windows that framed the forest outside. Sunlight poured in, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air. Jack felt an odd mix of relief and curiosity. This was not what he had expected, but there was something comforting about the cabin now that it was alive with someone else's presence. As they talked, Jack learned more about Emily. She had been taking care of the cabin for several months, keeping it clean, tending to a small garden outside, and even repairing some of the old wooden beams that were showing signs of age. She had grown attached to the place, though she understood that it was now his property. Jack listened, fascinated. He had never spent much time with anyone outside his family, yet her calm confidence and gentle humor drew him in. He found himself laughing at her small jokes and nodding at her observations about life in the mountains. After a while, Jack realized it was getting late. The sun was dipping behind the trees, casting long shadows across the cabin. "Well," he said, "I guess we should figure out the next steps. I don't want to make things difficult for you." Emily smiled softly. "I appreciate that. Maybe I can stay a few days while I arrange my things. It's not like I have anywhere else to go immediately." Jack hesitated, then nodded. "All right. A few days is fine. We'll figure it out together. I just want to make sure we respect each other." There was a quiet understanding between them, an unspoken agreement that they would share the cabin peacefully, at least for now. Jack went outside to inspect the property while Emily tidied up. As he walked around, he imagined the life he could build here, working on the cabin, enjoying the forest, and maybe, just maybe, having some company. By the time he returned, the cabin felt different to him. It was no longer just a dream of solitude. It was real, alive, and full of possibilities. Jack and Emily sat on the porch as the sky turned pink and orange, sipping hot tea from mugs she had prepared. The air was crisp, and the sound of birds returning to their nests filled the silence. Jack realized something he hadn't expected. He was looking forward to waking up in this cabin, not alone, but with someone else who shared the space. He didn't know how long she would stay, or what would happen next. But for the first time in a long while, he felt excited about the future. Emily, too, felt a strange sense of comfort. She had been cautious at first, unsure of the man who now owned her temporary home, but she could see that Jack was kind, thoughtful, and respectful. Maybe, she thought, this unexpected meeting was not a mistake. As night fell, the cabin glowed softly from the fireplace. Jack set up his sleeping bag in the corner, while Emily took the small bed in the loft. They exchanged polite smiles, a sense of camaraderie growing quietly between them. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying the promise of change, adventure, and an unexpected connection neither of them had anticipated. Jack lay awake for a while, listening to the sounds of the forest, thinking about the day's surprising events. He realized that life was full of surprises, and sometimes, the best ones came when you least expected them. He closed his eyes, feeling a sense of peace and anticipation, wondering what tomorrow might bring. For Emily, the night was calm too. She reflected on the unexpected turn of events, feeling a flicker of hope. Perhaps this cabin, bought sight unseen, was more than a property. It was a place where new beginnings could happen. And perhaps, in this quiet, rustic cabin in the mountains, two strangers had met at just the right time. The next morning, Jack woke to the soft golden light streaming through the cabin's windows. The air was crisp, carrying the fresh scent of pine and damp earth. He stretched and glanced around the small cabin. Emily was already up, quietly preparing breakfast. She moved with ease, humming softly, and Jack couldn't help but smile. There was something comforting about her presence, a warmth that made the cabin feel even more like home. Jack stepped into the kitchen area. "Morning," he said, trying to keep his voice casual, though he felt a little nervous. Emily looked up and returned his smile. Morning. Coffee? Yes, please, Jack replied. He watched her as she poured the steaming liquid into 2 mugs, setting them on the table. The aroma of coffee mixed with the faint smell of wood smoke from the fireplace, creating a cozy, inviting atmosphere. They sat together, sipping quietly for a moment. The silence was easy, not awkward, as though the cabin itself encouraged calm conversation. Finally, Jack spoke. So, what will you do after a few days? Do you have a plan? Emily hesitated, stirring her coffee slowly. I don't really have anywhere urgent to go. I've been living quietly, keeping to myself. This cabin has been my little world for a while. But now, I suppose it's time to move on eventually. Jack nodded, understanding. Well, if it helps, I don't mind having you around a bit longer. It might be easier for both of us while we figure things out. Emily looked surprised, then smiled softly. After breakfast, Jack suggested they take a walk around the property. The sun was higher now, warming the forest and illuminating the mountain views. Emily led the way, pointing out plants, herbs, and small trails she had discovered over the months. Jack listened intently, learning more than he had ever expected about the forest. He was impressed by her knowledge and amazed at how much she had accomplished on her own. As they walked, Jack shared stories about his life on the ranch. He spoke of the animals, the work, and the quiet nights under the stars. Emily listened carefully, laughing at his light-hearted jokes and showing genuine interest in his daily routines. By the time they returned to the cabin, they both felt a little closer, connected by the shared experience of exploring the land. The next few days passed in a rhythm that surprised them both. Jack worked on some repairs around the cabin, fixing broken boards on the porch and strengthening the door locks. Emily helped, offering practical advice and encouragement. Together, they managed tasks that neither would have done alone, and the work became a bridge for their growing friendship. In the evenings, they would sit by the fireplace, sharing stories from their past. Jack learned about Emily's family, her love for nature, and the challenges she had faced living alone. Emily learned about Jack's childhood, the ranch, and his simple dreams for the future. Their conversations were filled with laughter, curiosity, and the occasional comfortable silence that spoke more than words ever could. One afternoon, dark clouds gathered on the horizon, and Jack noticed the wind picking up. "Looks like a storm is coming," he said. Emily glanced outside and nodded. "We better make sure everything is secure." They worked together quickly, fastening shutters and moving loose tools inside. As the first drops of rain began to fall, Jack realized just how strong and capable Emily was. She was not just someone living in the cabin. She was a partner in handling the challenges of life. The storm grew heavier, rain tapping loudly against the wooden roof and wind whistling through the trees. They settled inside the cabin, lighting the fireplace for warmth. Jack brought over a blanket and handed it to Emily. "Here, you'll be cold if you sit there." Emily smiled, accepting the blanket. "Thanks. I didn't expect a storm this strong." Jack shrugged. "Nature has its own plans. We just adapt." As the storm raged outside, they talked and laughed, sharing more personal thoughts. Jack realized he was not just enjoying her company. He was beginning to care about her deeply. Emily felt the same, noticing the way Jack listened with genuine interest, the way he respected her thoughts and space. The cabin, once a symbol of solitude, had become a place where trust and friendship blossomed. By nightfall, the storm had passed, leaving a peaceful, wet calm in its wake. Jack and Emily stepped outside for a moment, taking in the view. The moonlight reflected on wet leaves, and the stars shone brightly in the clear sky. "It's beautiful," Emily whispered, her voice soft and almost reverent. Jack nodded, glancing at her. "It really is. I'm glad we're here. Together, I mean." Emily smiled, a warmth spreading across her face. Me too. The days that followed were filled with small adventures and quiet moments. They cooked meals together, explored nearby trails, and shared stories by the fire. Jack showed Emily how to care for the small garden outside, while she taught him how to identify edible plants and herbs. They worked side by side, learning from each other. And slowly, the cabin became more than just a property. It became a home filled with laughter, care, and mutual respect. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emily spoke softly. "You know, I didn't expect to find anyone like you here. I thought this cabin would just be a quiet place for me, alone. But now, it feels different. Better." Jack turned to her, his eyes reflecting the fading light. "I feel the same. This cabin, it's more than I imagined. And having you here, it makes it even better." There was a pause, a quiet understanding between them. Words were not necessary. Their connection had grown naturally, quietly, over the past few days. They shared a sense of companionship that neither had expected. A bond built on trust, respect, and the shared experience of living in the mountains. As night fell, Jack and Emily prepared for bed. The cabin was warm from the fire, the air outside cool and fresh. They settled into their usual places, a comfortable distance apart, yet the presence of the other was reassuring. For the first time in a long while, both felt content, at peace, and hopeful for the future. The cabin, once a simple dream of solitude for Jack, had become a place of new beginnings. It was a reminder that life often brings surprises when we least expect them. A sight unseen cabin had led to a meeting that neither Jack nor Emily could have predicted, and in that remote mountain home, two strangers had found friendship, trust, and perhaps even the start of something more meaningful. As they drifted off to sleep, the forest outside quiet and still, both felt a sense of gratitude. For Jack, it was the realization that life's best moments often come unexpectedly. For Emily, it was the comfort of knowing she had found someone who respected her, valued her presence, and shared her appreciation for simple joys. In the days ahead, the cabin would continue to be a place of shared laughter, small adventures, and growing connection. Jack and Emily had learned that sometimes, chance encounters can change lives in ways we never imagine. And for both of them, the cabin was no longer just a building in the mountains, it was the beginning of a story neither would forget.